Do not you dare ask us to cancel our plans again. We have had these Elton John tickets for months, my mother yelled. Her voice echoed through my hospital room. I sat there stunned, clutching my phone with trembling hands. It was Christmas Eve at Las Vegas Medical Center. It was just me, my 2-year-old twins Ethan and Emily playing quietly in the corner, and a nurse named Valerie checking my vitals. The pain in my abdomen was excruciating. It was like someone was twisting a knife inside me. But the look of indifference on my mother's face through the video call hurt even more. My name is Natasha Wilson. I am 33 years old. For as long as I can remember, I have been the afterthought in my own family. My younger sister Jessica, the golden child, could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I could not even get them to watch their only grandchildren while I underwent emergency surgery for complications related to my husband's death 6 months ago. The doctors had found internal bleeding that required immediate attention. But all my parents cared about was their concert tickets and celebrating Christmas Eve with Jessica. When I finally asked for their help after exhausting all other options, my dad's response cut deeper than any surgical tool could. You are becoming a real nuisance and burden, Natasha. We are retired now. We deserve to enjoy our lives without your constant problems. I have been supporting my parents financially since they took early retirement 3 years ago. Every month without fail, I sent them $2,500 to help with their mortgage and expenses. Even after James died, I did it out of love and duty, believing families should support each other. How foolish I was. As my tears fell silently onto the hospital blanket, Valerie gently squeezed my shoulder. My friend Olivia is a professional nanny who specializes in childhood trauma. Let me call her for you, she offered. Her kindness was a stark contrast to my parents' callousness. The twins were still too young to understand what was happening. They had already lost their father to a car accident. Now, they might lose me too, if the surgery went wrong. The thought terrified me, but not as much as leaving them with people who saw them as burdens. In that moment, with pain shooting through my body and disappointment crushing my heart, I made my decision. Yes, please call her, I told Valerie. And with those words, I began cutting the poisonous ties to the people who had raised me but never truly loved me. As I hung up the phone, a wave of memories washed over me. My childhood had been filled with moments of being overlooked while Jessica received all the attention. When I graduated college with honors, my parents barely acknowledged it because Jessica had been cast in a local commercial that same weekend. When I married James, they complained about the wedding venue being too far from their home. Even when the twins were born, they visited only once, claiming the babies were too fussy for their liking. James had been my rock through it all. He understood the pain of family disappointment, having been estranged from his own father for years. We will build our own family, he would say, one that knows how to love. And we did, creating a warm home filled with laughter and acceptance. But 6 months ago, a drunk driver stole him away, leaving me to raise our children alone while battling depression and grief. Despite my loss, I continued supporting my parents. I even increased the monthly amount when they mentioned struggling with inflation. I wanted to be better than them, to show that families should stand by each other no matter what. The irony was crushing. Here I was, bleeding internally, possibly dying, and they could not miss one concert to care for my children. Valerie returned with news that her friend Olivia would arrive within the hour. She is amazing with kids, Valerie assured me. She used to work with trauma victims at the children's hospital before becoming a private nanny. How much will this cost? I asked, worry creeping into my voice. Medical bills were already piling up, since James' insurance coverage had limitations. Do not worry about that now, Valerie said. Let us focus on getting you ready for surgery. But I was worried. I thought about the $2,500 I was scheduled to transfer to my parents next week. Money that could now help pay for childcare. Instead, the thought sparked something inside me. a flame of self-preservation that had been extinguished years ago. When Olivia arrived, she was everything Valerie had promised: kind, professional, and immediately connecting with the twins. As hospital staff prepared me for surgery, I made a decision. "Could you bring me my phone one more time?" I asked Valerie with shaking hands. I sent 2 messages. The first was to my bank, canceling all future automatic transfers to my parents' account. The second was to my parents: "I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve better than being your afterthoughts. Do not contact me again." As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I felt something unexpected. Through the pain and fear, freedom. The surgery was successful, but left me weaker than anticipated. I spent 5 days in the hospital, drifting in and out of consciousness, grateful for Olivia, who had gone above and beyond by staying with the twins in my hospital room during the days and taking them to my apartment at night. During one of my more lucid moments, I noticed my phone blinking with notifications. 27 missed calls and numerous text messages from my parents and Jessica. Most of the messages followed a predictable pattern: confusion, then anger, then desperate pleas about their mortgage payment. Not once did they ask how my surgery went or if the twins were okay. The final message from my father was particularly telling. "You can't just cut us off like this. We've planned a cruise next month, and the tickets are non-refundable." My sister's messages were different. She seemed genuinely confused. "Mom and Dad just told me you were having some minor procedure. What's going on? Why are they freaking out about money?" It dawned on me that my parents had lied to Jessica about the severity of my situation to justify their choice of concert over grandchildren. I decided to tell her the truth, sending her the full story while still groggy from medication. Her response came quickly. "Oh my God, Natasha. I had no idea it was an emergency surgery. They told me you were just being dramatic about a routine checkup." I would have watched the twins if I'd known. I'm so sorry I believed her. Jessica wasn't cruel. She had just been raised in an environment where she was taught that her needs came first. Perhaps this revelation would help her see our parents for who they truly were. By the time I was discharged, I had made several decisions. First, I hired Olivia part-time to help with the twins during my recovery. Second, I contacted a lawyer to draft a will, designating a trusted friend as the twins' guardian should anything happen to me. Certainly not my parents. Third, I blocked my parents' numbers, allowing only Jessica limited contact as I assessed her sincerity. The financial implications of my decision were significant. The $2,500 monthly payment I had been making to my parents represented nearly a third of my income as a graphic designer. Without that burden, I could actually afford proper childcare and maybe even start rebuilding the emergency fund that had been depleted after James's death. That night, as I lay in my own bed, with the twins sleeping in their room across the hall, I felt a complex mix of emotions. There was guilt, the ingrained feeling that I was somehow wrong for putting myself and my children first. There was fear about managing recovery while caring for 2 toddlers. But there was also an unfamiliar sense of self-respect taking root. My phone pinged with a text from Jessica. "I just had a huge fight with Mom and Dad about how they treated you. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Can we talk tomorrow?" Maybe I wasn't completely alone after all. 2 weeks after my surgery, I was slowly regaining my strength. The incision site still throbbed painfully when I moved too quickly, but I was managing better each day. Olivia had been a godsend, arriving each morning to help with the twins while I worked from home. My graphic design clients had been surprisingly understanding about my limited availability, and I was grateful for the remote work that allowed me to stay close to my children. Jessica had visited twice, bringing healthy meals and spending time with the twins. Our conversations were cautious at first, but eventually she opened up about her own experiences with our parents. "They always made it seem like you were choosing to distance yourself from the family," she admitted one evening as we watched the twins play. "I never realized they were pushing you away." I was beginning to see a new side to my sister, one that had been hidden beneath years of our parents' manipulation. While I wasn't ready to completely trust her yet, I appreciated her efforts. Then came the knock at the door. I had been half expecting it. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing in the hallway. My mother was clutching her designer purse nervously, while my father stood with his arms crossed, familiar, impatient patience etched on his face. I hesitated, heart pounding, before opening the door just enough to speak through the gap. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "Natasha, darling, we've been so worried," my mother began, her sugary tone immediately raising my defenses. "You haven't been answering our calls, and we needed to make sure you and the twins were all right." "We're fine," I replied flatly. "Now, if that's all." "It's not all," my father interrupted, pushing slightly against the door. "We need to discuss this ridiculous financial situation. The bank called about our mortgage payment, and we had to dip into our cruise savings to cover it." The audacity was breathtaking. No questions about my recovery, no concern for their grandchildren, just demands about money. "I told you I'm cutting financial ties," I said. I meant it. "But sweetie," my mother pleaded, her voice rising an octave, "we've come to depend on that money. Your father and I adjusted our lifestyle based on your commitment to help us." "My commitment," I echoed in disbelief. "I've been sending money out of guilt and obligation, while you couldn't even watch your grandchildren during my emergency surgery." My father's face darkened. "That's not fair, Natasha. We had plans more important than my children's safety, more important than my life." "Do you know what the doctor said?" I replied, anger rising. There was a chance I might not survive that surgery. "Did you even bother to ask?" Their silence was answer enough. "We made one mistake," my mother whispered dramatically. "Are you really going to punish us like this?" "This isn't punishment, Mom. This is consequence," I said, feeling a strange calm overtake me. "I've spent my entire life seeking your approval and support, and in my moment of greatest need, you chose Elton John tickets over helping me." "We're your parents," my father interjected, his tone shifting to demand respect. "And I'm a parent too," I countered. "I would never treat Ethan and Emily the way you've treated me, never." Just then, Emily toddled into view, clutching her stuffed giraffe. My mother instantly switched tactics. "There's my precious grandbaby," she cooed, bending down. Emily, unfamiliar with these relative strangers, backed away and looked at me with uncertainty in her eyes. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. "When I'm ready to talk, if I'm ever ready, I'll reach out." "But the money," my father started. "No longer your concern," I finished, gently closing the door. The next morning, my parents returned with reinforcements. My Aunt Patty, my mother's sister, who had always positioned herself as the family peacemaker. "Natasha, honey, let us be reasonable," Aunt Patty pleaded from outside my door, which I had not opened. "Your parents are struggling without your help." "They managed their finances for decades before I started helping them," I replied through the door. "They chose early retirement knowing their savings weren't adequate. We made those decisions because you promised to help us," my mother's voice broke in. "We've had to cancel our cruises, and now we might lose the house." Their attempts at manipulation were so transparent now that I'd stepped back from the fog of guilt they'd surrounded me with for years. When had I ever promised lifetime support? I'd offered to help temporarily after their retirement, but somehow that had evolved into an expected permanent arrangement. "Mom, Dad, I'm recovering from major surgery and caring for 2 toddlers," I said firmly, before walking away from the door, ignoring their continued knocking and pleading. Later that day, I received a group email from my father addressed to the entire extended family, detailing how I had abandoned them in their time of need after they had sacrificed everything for me. The email conveniently omitted their refusal to help with the twins during my emergency surgery, instead painting me as an ungrateful daughter who had suddenly cut them off without reason. What they hadn't anticipated was the backlash. My cousin Michael, who lived near my parents, replied to the group. "Uncle Robert, didn't you just buy a new boat last month? And Aunt Diana, wasn't that a new diamond tennis bracelet you were showing off at Thanksgiving?" Other family members chimed in, many privately messaging me to ask for the full story. Even Aunt Patty called me directly after learning the truth. "I had no idea about your surgery," she admitted. "They told me you were just being dramatic about some routine procedure and using it to punish them financially." Meanwhile, Jessica had fully taken my side after witnessing our parents' behavior firsthand. She helped me craft a single, factual response to the family email thread, simply stating, "I recently underwent emergency surgery with a significant risk of complications. My parents refused to watch my children during this time because they had concert tickets. I am now focusing on my recovery and caring for my twins without additional stress." The support that followed was overwhelming. Cousin Michael's wife dropped off home-cooked meals. A second cousin I barely knew offered her services as a part-time babysitter free of charge. Jessica started spending weekends at my apartment, getting to know her niece and nephew while helping me recuperate. Most surprisingly, Valerie from the hospital connected me with a support group for young widowed parents. Their first meeting was held via Zoom, so I could participate from home, and for the first time since James died, I felt truly understood by people who had walked my path. My parents' financial situation, meanwhile, deteriorated quickly. They had indeed been living beyond their means, counting on my monthly contributions to maintain their lifestyle of travel and luxury purchases. Jessica discovered they had taken a second mortgage on their house a year ago to buy their boat, assuming I would continue subsidizing their lifestyle. Jessica said they had been lying to everyone about their finances, expressing her shock after reviewing their financial situation at their request. They were not destitute, she explained, but simply overspent. They would be fine if they sold the boat and their vacation timeshare. Their increasingly desperate voicemails and texts continued, but with each passing day, their hold on me weakened. I was building something new from the ashes of their betrayal, a genuine support network based on mutual care rather than obligation. 1 month after my surgery, a major, unexpected twist occurred. My parents received a foreclosure notice. Jessica called to inform me, her voice a mix of concern and exasperation. "They're in complete panic mode," she explained. "The bank is giving them 60 days to catch up on payments, or they'll lose the house." "What about their retirement funds?" I asked, bouncing Emily on my knee while Ethan napped. "Mostly depleted," Jessica replied. "They spent a chunk on that boat, then invested the rest in some scheme Dad's golf buddy recommended. They lost almost everything." Jessica sighed. "I'm not saying you should help them, Natasha. I just thought you should know." Later that evening, I received desperate texts from both parents. They had abandoned all pretense of concern for my well-being and were openly begging for money. My mother's message was particularly revealing. "We never thought you'd actually cut us off," she wrote. "We assumed you were just angry and would start sending money again after a week or two." Their assumption that my boundaries weren't real infuriated me. All those years of putting their needs before mine, of accepting their mistreatment, they had never respected me at all. Meanwhile, my own life was transforming in unexpected ways. The support group had become a lifeline, connecting me with other parents facing similar challenges. Through them, I met Diana, a real estate agent whose husband had died of cancer 2 years earlier, leaving her with a 3-year-old son. She helped me consider options I hadn't thought possible, like selling my too-small apartment and using the equity to move to a more affordable neighborhood with better childcare options. I had also started a small side business designing memorial websites, inspired by the one I had created for James. Several members of my support group had commissioned sites, and word was spreading. For the first time since becoming a widow, I felt a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. The contrast between my growth and my parents' collapse became even more apparent when they showed up unannounced at my apartment again, this time with a detailed spreadsheet of their debts. "We need $144,000 to catch up on the mortgage and avoid foreclosure," my father explained, his usual authoritative tone now tinged with desperation. I invited them in, not out of obligation, but because I was curious to hear their perspective now that they were truly facing consequences. "What about selling the boat?" I asked, gesturing for them to sit at my small dining table. We take a loss, my father protested. And the timeshare, my mother added quickly. We've tried, but the market is terrible. Besides, those are our retirement luxuries. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Luxuries you can't afford. We could afford them with your help, my father countered, his tone hardening. It's the least you could do after everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly, the question hanging in the air like a challenge. The twins chose that moment to toddle into the room, Ethan clutching his favorite truck and Emily babbling happily. My parents' expressions softened instantly. There are our precious babies, my mother cooed, reaching for Emily, who promptly hid behind my legs. They don't know you, I stated simply. You've seen them, 3 times in their lives. You chose not to be involved. That's not fair, my father protested. We're busy people, too. Too busy for your only grandchildren, I observed. Too busy to help your daughter through emergency surgery, but not too busy to ask for money. My mother's face crumpled, whether from genuine emotion or calculated manipulation. I couldn't tell anymore. Without your help, we'll lose everything, she whispered. I lost my husband, I replied, my voice steady. My children lost their father. We survived. You'll survive too. 3 months after my surgery, my parents faced the inevitable. They were forced to sell their house to avoid foreclosure. Jessica kept me updated on their situation, though I maintained my distance. They had managed to find a modest condo, significantly downsizing from their 4,000 square foot lakefront property. My father had reluctantly sold his boat at a loss, and they had finally unloaded the timeshare for a fraction of what they had paid. They're actually blaming you for their financial problems in front of everyone, Jessica informed me during one of her weekly visits. It's bizarre to watch. They tell anyone who will listen that you abandoned them after promising lifelong support. Let them talk, I replied, feeling surprisingly unbothered. The truth. My extended family had largely rallied around me after learning the full story. Even my father's sister, who had always taken his side in family disputes, called to express her support after hearing about their refusal to help during my surgery. Meanwhile, my own situation had improved dramatically. Diana from my support group had helped me find and purchase a small 3-bedroom house in a family-friendly neighborhood. The mortgage payments were actually less than my apartment rent had been, and the twins had a backyard to play in for the first time in their lives. My side business designing memorial websites had grown enough that I could reduce my graphic design clients and focus on work that felt meaningful. Olivia still helped with childcare 3 days a week, but I had adjusted my schedule to maximize time with Ethan and Emily. Most importantly, I had found a community. Neighbors brought casseroles when we moved in. The support group organized playdates. Jessica had become a genuine sister, rather than a competitor for our parents' affection. Even Valerie from the hospital occasionally stopped by with her children. I had lost my husband and cut ties with my parents, yet somehow I felt less alone than ever before. 6 months after my surgery, I received a letter. An actual handwritten letter from my mother. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won out. Inside was something I had never seen before. A genuine apology. I've had time to reflect on my behavior, she wrote. Watching you build a life without our help has forced me to confront some painful truths about myself. As a mother, I was jealous of your independence, your resilience. I resented that you didn't seem to need me the way I needed my own mother. But now I see that you did need me, just not in the ways I wanted to be needed. When you asked us to care for the twins during your surgery, you were reaching out and we failed you completely. I'm deeply sorry. The letter continued, explaining how they had completely restructured their finances. My father had taken a part-time job at a local hardware store. They had sold most of their luxury items and were living modestly for the first time in decades. She didn't ask for money or even forgiveness, just acknowledgement of her apology. I showed the letter to Jessica, who was skeptical. They've been talking about writing to you for weeks, she said. Dad was against it at first, but I think he's starting to see things differently too, especially after his heart scare last month. Heart scare? I asked, concerned despite myself. Just high blood pressure and chest pains, but it scared him, Jessica explained. He on medication now, and actually following doctor's orders. I think facing mortality has humbled him a bit. I wasn't ready to respond to the letter immediately. I needed time to process my feelings. Was this genuine remorse or another manipulation tactic? Had they truly changed, or were they simply adapting their strategy? That night, I looked at old family photos for the first time since cutting ties. Behind the smiling faces, I saw patterns I had been blind to before. My parents had always been performers, playing the role of perfect parents while serving their own needs first. A year after my surgery, I finally agreed to meet my parents at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near my new home. When they arrived, I barely recognized them. My father seemed smaller somehow, his confident posture replaced by a humbler demeanor. My mother's designer clothes had been exchanged for simple, practical attire. The twins were with Jessica for the afternoon. I wasn't ready for a family reunion just yet. We sat in awkward silence until my father did something unprecedented. He cried. "I've been a terrible father," he admitted, his voice breaking, "and an even worse grandfather. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I see it now, how selfish we've been." My mother reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but gesturing toward it. "We've spent months in family therapy," she explained. "It was Jessica's idea, and we resisted at first, but it's been transformative." I didn't rush to forgive them or make promises I couldn't keep. Instead, I shared pictures of the twins and told them about our new life. They listened without interrupting, without making it about themselves, perhaps for the first time ever. As we parted, my father asked quietly, "Would it be possible someday to know our grandchildren?" I considered this carefully before answering. "That depends on your actions, not your words," I said. "If you're genuinely committed to change, we can start with short supervised visits. But understand this, my children will only have relationships with people who respect their mother." Walking away from that meeting, I felt neither the crushing weight of obligation nor the burning resentment that had defined our relationship for so long. Instead, I felt something new, the calm assurance of a woman who knew her worth, who had created boundaries, and would enforce them without apology. Whether my parents could truly change remained to be seen. The change remained to be seen. But I had already transformed from a daughter desperate for approval into a mother fierce in her protection and clear in her expectations.